Hey friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun, Daf 50 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, who could tell me what Daf 50 talks about? Still a shtickle cough. I don't think too major, but minor. Friends, we start the fifth parak of Masechta Yevamos. We're on Daf 50. Wow, shnikes. Daf 50 is a lot of dafs, man. We've really been, pushing our way. We have not been deterred, friends. We have not been deterred. Masechta Yevamos came along, and it's like Reuven, Shimon, Sarah, Rivka. They were like, yo, this is going to be insane. And we're like, yo, we got this. Friends, we start today the fifth parak of Masechta Yevamos, Rabbi Gamliel. What do you want me to tell you? It talks about Yibum and Chalitza and stuff. Got it? Good. Let's go weiter. We're on Daf Nun, Daf 50 of Masechta Yevamos, halfway through the first Amud, which is good. We already got a head start. Rabbi Gamliel Omer says the Heilik Rabbi Gamliel. Givaldik. Ein get acher get. There's no get after a get. Okay? V'lo maimer acher maimer. There's no maimer after maimer. V'lo be'ila acher be'ila. There's no be'ila after be'ila. V'lo chalitza acher chalitza. There's no chalitza after chalitza. V'chacham om yesh get acher get. Chacham say there is a get after a get. V'yesh maimer acher maimer. There is maimer after maimer. Aval get acher be'ila v'lo aval lo acher be'ila v'lo acher chalitza klum, but not after be'ila or chalitza anything. Friends, how did I do? Oh gosh, let's go weiter. Well, no, let's not go weiter. Let's start over. All right. So basically, here's the gist, friends. Rabbi Gamliel says that ein get acher get. What does that mean? It means there could be two manifestations of this. Either it could be talking about where Reuven is married to Sarah and Rivka, and Reuven dies, and it's talking about Shimon, then gives a get to Sarah, and then gives a get also to Rivka. Or it could be talking about where Reuven is married to Sarah, Reuven dies, and then there's Shimon and Levi, and Shimon gives a get to Sarah, and Rivka gives a get to, and Levi gives a get to Sarah. Let's choose one of those examples. Let's just say that it's talking about Reuven is married to Sarah and Rivka. Reuven dies. Now Shimon, Hillel Lester, and then Shimon gives a get. Now, of course, by Yibum, a get is not what you do. You do Chalitza, right? But nonetheless, as we've seen, there's like get, there's Mimer. Well, let's even back up a second. I mean, this stuff we know already, but like, in the case of Yibum, right, Reuven's married to Sarah, Reuven dies, Shimon has to do Yibum. So either there's Yibum, which is Shimon sleeps with Sarah, and by doing that, they're now married, and that's Yibum. Chalitza is that they do the whole shoe ceremony, and then so those are the things that happen in this case, midoraisa. However, midorabanan, there's mimer, right, which is that Shimon is mekadesh, he like gives money, kesef kiddushin, to Sarah, so he's not just sleeping with her, but there's he's being mekadesher. So that's midorabanan, and also midorabanan, you're not supposed to give a get, but technically if you did give a get, so then you can no longer do Yibum. But that's also, midorabanan, the get doesn't really make, midoraisa, the get doesn't make a difference. You have to do Chalitza. Anyways, so back to our case. You have Reuven, he's married to Sarah and Rivka. Reuven, gestorben, goes to Wellwood, dies. Shimon gives a get to Sarah, and then he gives a get to Rivka. Now, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel, Omer says, Rabbi Gamliel, ein get acher get. Look, once Shimon gives the get to Sarah, giving the get to Rivka is irrelevant. V'lo maimer acher maimer. And there's no maimer acher maimer. If Shimon, is mekadesh Sarah, right, he gives kesef kiddushin to Sarah, so then if he does maimer also with Rivka, it's irrelevant, because he already did it with Sarah. V'lo be'ila acher be'ila. There is no yibum acher yibum, kilu. Once Shimon does Yibum with Sarah, that's it, right? There's no Yibum with Rivka anymore. V'lo chalitza acher chalitza. And if Shimon does chalitza with Sarah, so then that's it. There's no longer chalitza with Rivka. Chalitza with Sarah, it works for both of them, and that's that. The Chacham yesh get acher get, v'yesh maimer acher maimer. The Chacham say actually, if Shimon gives a get to Sarah and then gives a get to Rivka, the get to Rivka is relevant. There was also mimer after mimer, i.e. if Shimon does mimer with Sarah and then does mimer with Rivka, there is relevance to that. Avalo achar bi'ilav lachar chalitza klum. But say the Chachamim, once you do yibum, that's it. Once you do chalitza, that's it. Right? There's no chalitza achar chalitza, there's no yibum achar yibum. Ketzad. Now, what are basically now the Gemara, the Mishnah just goes into lots of different situations of yibum and stuff. Also, maimer biyevimto. Okay, so let's say you have just a sort of the simplest case of yibum, which of course is relative. But Reuven is married to Sarah, Reuven dies, now you have Shimon. So, also maimer biyevimto. So if Shimon does maimer with Sarah, vinosan la get, right? So now that they did maimer, so the interesting thing is, friends, when it comes to yibum, right? So Reuven dies and Shimon now has like a zika with Sarah. So either you do yibum or chalitza, right? That's like sort of the standard thing. You do yibum or you do chalitza. However, there are dirabbanans. For example, maimer. Not only that, my understanding is that you're encouraged to do maimer, right? That it isn't just about just sleeping with Sarah. Uh-oh, we got guests. Ooh, what? What, do they have a dog or something? No way. I don't know. Oh, it's about to get loud. Do you hear that? You starting to hear the background noise? I've been listening to the recordings recently. You can hear the background noise, I think. So now the background noise starts. All right. Well, that means I gotta try and focus. Oof. I was able to focus so much until the people came home. Oh, that's a sound I don't recognize. She's talking about her in-laws. I don't know who this is. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe we should try to get them on Babylon Talmud. Maybe let's see. Ashley! Ashley! I have no clue what these people are talking about. I don't know, they're trying to work out like Shabbos plans or something. I have no clue what they're talking about. They're happy, Baruch Hashem. It's all min hashamayim, okay. Alright. They're going to message each other tomorrow night. Have a wonderful chag. Alright. Okay. They're going to Mayanot. That's where they're going to daven. Oh, Chag Sameach, and she's out of here. Thank God. Oh yeah, she had a dog. Oh no, now my sister-in-law's yelling. Oh, she's talking in Hebrew. Okay, let's slam the door. Oh wow, her Hebrew's not bad. Alright. Alright. You think they're going to lower the volume now? Alright, let's try and go weiter. Ketzad. Also, maimer bivimto. So where am I? V'nosan la get. So where are we? So if you have Shimon and he does maimer with Sarah, right? Okay. So v'nosan la get. I don't even know what we were talking about before. So he does maimer, right? So now like midar abanon, they're like, married, right? If you do kiddushin, so then how do you break up kiddushin? How do you break up marriage? With a get, right? So therefore, when there's yibum, so you do chalitza. But once you do maimer, and maimer is like kiddushin, so how do you dissolve kiddushin? With a get. So therefore, also maimer biyevimto. So if Shimon does maimer with Sarah, so then v'nosan la get, and then he gives Sarah a get in order to dissolve the kiddushin, but still tzrichei menu chalitza. Oh gosh, they're really giving me a hard time here. 1 second. I told them I'm recording. Hopefully that'll help. Get. So tzrichei menu chalitza. So they still have to do chalitza, right? Because they never did chalitza yet. So they did maimer. Maimer is like kiddushin. Now since they did maimer, the chalitza is no longer enough, right? Chalitza will work to dissolve the yibum, but right, chalitza will work to dissolve the yibum, but you kind of got yourself into a kiddushin situation by doing maimer. So to dissolve that, you also need a get. So if he does maimer, right, Shimon does maimer with Sarah, so he needs to give a get to undo the maimer, and then chalitza to undo the zika from the yibum. Also maimer va chalitza. If he did maimer, v'cholatz, and he also did chalitza, what do you still need to do? Tzricha menu get. You still have to give a get. Also, maimer uva'al harezo k'mitzvasa. Now, if Shimon does maimer with Sarah, right, which is like basically Kedushin, and then he does Yibum with her, that's the ideal, right? Harezo k'mitzvasa. That's exactly what we prescribe, right? First do maimer, and then do Yibum. Noson get v'also maimer. If he gave a get, okay, so Reuven dies, now Shimon gives Sarah a get. Now he's really supposed to do chalitza, but he gives her a get. So once he gives her a get, he can no longer do Yibum anymore. So Noson get v'asa maimer, okay, so if he gave her a get, and then he went ahead and did maimer, so he can't do Yibum anymore since he gave her a get. So now you need to give another get to undo the maimer that he did, but you still haven't done chalitza, so now you also have to do chalitza, right? So Noson get v'asa maimer, and then he did maimer after that, so tzricha get, you have to give another get to undo that second maimer. You have to give a second get to undo the maimer, v'chalitza, and then you have to do chalitza to undo the Yibum. Noson get, if he gave a get to Sarah uva'al, and then afterwards he did Yibum with her after giving her a get. Now, Mida Oraisa, that's a proper Yibum, right? Because the get is irrelevant in the context of Yibum. So Mida Oraisa, the get is irrelevant. He slept with her and did Yibum, so technically they're married. So what do you have to do? But you can't stay married because you did get, so we kind of force you to break up that marriage. So tzricha get, so you have to give a get for the fact that he did Yibum and now they're married. V'chalitza, and you also have to then do chalitza as well. And the interesting thing is that even though Mida Oraisa, they were married through Yibum because the initial get wasn't anything significant Mida Oraisa, but because Mida Rabbanon, the get matters, so therefore it was yikilu as though it was like a weaker kind of marriage, and therefore it's not like they did a full Yibum because it was following a get, and therefore you still have to do chalitza. Noson get v'cholatz, if a fellow gave a get, and then after giving the get, he then did chalitza, so enacha chalitza klum, so that's it. So okay, they're done. Cholatz, if Shimon did chalitza with Sarah, also maimer, and then after he did chalitza, he then did maimer. V'nosan get, or he gave a get after chalitza, uval, or he did yibum with her. So skip to the next line for a second, just because it makes sense in terms of the flow. Enacha chalitza klum. Once he did that initial chalitza, they're done. They're separated, and anything else he's doing, right? The mimer, the get, the be'ila, in the context of Yibum, these things are irrelevant once he did chalitza. Now, back up a line again. So, O Baal, or if he did Yibum with her, v'asa mimer, nosan get, v'cholatz, and then afterwards he did mimer, get, cholatz, right? So it says, Einach chalitza klum, but really that was going on the previous thing, really. Rashi says the Gemara is going to ask, shouldn't this be Einach bia klum? But the point is, once he does Yibum, so then this chapter is over, and even if afterwards he does chalitza or anything like that, it won't be anything, at least within the context of Yibum. If he gives her a get, so then they're no longer married. But Yibum is over once he does Yibum. Achas Yevamos, achas liyavam echod. Now, this is whether we're talking about, the simplest case of Yibum, which is Sarah doing Yibum with Shimon. Or if Reuven was married to Sarah and Rivka, Reuven dies, now you have Sarah and Rivka to Shimon. Ketzad, now how does this work with two wives, right? So let's say Reuven dies, and now you have Shimon and Sarah and Rivka. So also Maimer Bozoy Maimer Bozoy. So if Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, and he also does Maimer with Rivka, so tzrichos shnei gittin b'chalitza. So you have to have a get from both of them, because it's like the rabbis who say yesh maimer achar maimer. So therefore he does, right? Shimon does maimer with Sarah and he does maimer with Rivka. So now it's like, right? There's like a kiddushin with both of them. So he has to give a get now to both of them, and he still needs to do chalitza. So he does that maimer bozoy v'get lozoy. If he does maimer with Sarah, okay, but then he gives a get to Rivka. So once he gives a get to one of them, so Kilu, his prospects for Yibum are over. So tzricha get, so he has to, so he already gave a get to Rivka, and he did Maimer with Sarah, but now he needs to give a get to Sarah to undo the mimer that he did. V'chalitza, and they still have to do, they're still going to have to do chalitza. Mimer bazu uval eszoy. If he did mimer with Sarah, but then he does yibum with Rivka. So he does mimer with Sarah, and then he does yibum with Rivka. So the thing is, once he did mimer with Sarah, he's not really supposed to do yibum with Rivka anymore. So tzrichos beis gittin, you have to get divorced from both of them. V'chalitza and chalitza. Mimer bazoi v'cholatz lazoi. If he does mimer with Sarah and chalitza with Rivka, so chalitza's been done. So you just need a get for the mimer. So harishona tzricha get, you need a get with Sarah. Get lazoi v'get lazoi. If he gives a get to Sarah and he gives a get to Rivka, well then tzrichos and chalitza, you just need to do chalitza at this point. Get lazoi uval eszoy. If he gives a get to Sarah and then he does yibum with Rivka after giving a get to Sarah, well then they have to get divorced, right? Tzricha get v'chalitza, they have to get divorced, and they also still do chalitza at that point. Also, probably similar to like what we said a few minutes ago, that because the yibum that he did with Rivka after giving a get to Sarah, it was like a weaker yibum, so therefore even after they get divorced, he gave a get to Sarah and then he did yibum with Rivka, so even after he gets divorced from Rivka, they still need to do chalitza. Get lazoi u'maimer bazoi. If he gave a get to Sarah and then he did a mimer with Rivka, tzricha get v'chalitza, so you need a get for Rivka and then they still need to do chalitza. Get lazoi v'cholatz lazoi. If he gives a get to Sarah and then he does chalitza with Rivka, and acha chalitza klum, so they don't have to do anything else. Okay, right? Meaning he gave a get to Sarah, so they still need to do chalitza, and then he did chalitza, he did it with Rivka. Okay, so they're done. Cholatz v'cholatz. If he does chalitza with Sarah and with Rivka, alright, or cholatz, or he does chalitza with Sarah v'asa mimer, then after doing chalitza with Sarah, he does mimer with Rivka, nosan get, or he gives a get to Rivka, uval, or he did yibum with Rivka after doing chalitza with Sarah, or baal, uval, or if he did yibum with both of them, or baal v'asa mimer, if he did yibum with Sarah and then mimer with Rivka, nosan get, or he gave a get to Rivka, v'cholatz, or he did chalitza with Rivka, ein acha chalitza klum. So after chalitza, there's no difference. And also, right here, also we're going to ask, like, wait, weren't we just talking about yibum? But okay, meaning once he does chalitza with one of them, so then kilu yibum is over. And once he does yibum with one of them, yibum is over. Bein yavam echad shtei Yevamos, and whether we're talking about one yavam, right, Shimon with two Yevamos, with Sarah and Rivka, bein shnei yavam liyavama achas, or whether we're talking about Shimon and Levi with just Sarah. Okay. Now we're going to repeat something that we said earlier. Cholatz ve'asa mimer, that once you did chalitza, and then you do mimer, nosan get, or you give a get, do va'al, or you do yibum, or baal, or if you did yibum, ve'asa mimer, and then he does mimer, ve'nosan get, or he gives a get, ve'cholatz, or did chalitza, enacha chalitza klum. There's, after chalitza, and also after yibum, it's done. Yibum is over at that point. Bein batchila, bein be'emtza, bein basof. Wait, what did I do? V'cholatz enacha chalitza klum. Bein batchila, bein be'emtza, basof. Now that is whether you do chalitza as the first thing, whether in the middle, whether at the end, kilo, at any point, right? Whether you did chalitza was the first thing that you did, or whether you did, let's say, gave a get to Sarah and then you did chalitza with Rivka, or even if you did a get with Sarah and chalitza with, or even like mimer with Rivka and a get with Rachel and Sarah and a chalitza with Rachel, whatever it is, when you give a get, when you do chalitza, it's over. Now, when it comes to yibum, however, bizmanchi batchila en acharei klum. If with Sarah you do yibum, so yibum is over. However, be'emtzu vasof yesh acharei klum. But if you do yibum in the middle, so let's say, you give a get to Sarah and you do yibum with Rivka, and then you mimer with Rachel, so then the yibum is not like a proper yibum, and there's still more afterwards, like the get is still a proper get, or whatever comes third. Rabbi Nechemia says, Rabbi Nechemia, achas be'ila, v'achas chalitza, be'metchila, be'emtza, be'masov, ein achrei klum. Whereas Rabbi Nechemia says, look, whether we're talking about be'ila, whether we're talking about chalitza, it doesn't matter. Whenever you do it, yibum is over at that point. Now says the Gemara, Arkan lo pligi ela beget acher get u'maimer acher maimer. Look, the rabbis of Gamliel, they argue regarding, is there a get after a get? Is there a maimer after a maimer? Okay, fine. But aval get echod b'yivamo u'maimer echod b'yivamo mahane. But they both agree that if it's just, the concept of a get with a yivama or maimer with yivama works, right? They argue about what if you do another get or another maimer, but in terms of the concept of Shimon doing maimer with Sarah or giving a get to Sarah, they both agree that it's a thing. So my time, how come it's a thing? So Amar Rabbanan, the rabbis say, well, get b'yivama mahani. The rabbis say that a get works by a yivama, that if Shimon gives a get to Sarah, so then they can't do yibum anymore. Mishum de mahani ba'alma, because since a get works in general to dissolve, a relationship between a man and a woman. Di amad lo mahane, if you say that a get is irrelevant in the context of yibum, well then what will happen? Amrei, people are going to say, get lotzia v'chalitza lotzia. Well, the purpose of a get is to dissolve a marriage, and the purpose of chalitza is to dissolve yibum, the zika of yibum. When the get lo mahane, and if we're saying that in the context of yibum, a get does not work, well, guess what they're going to say? Chalitza nami lo mahane. Well, then chalitza, I guess, doesn't do anything, right? People are going to assume that get and chalitza are basically the same thing. And if get doesn't do anything by yibum, then chalitza also doesn't do anything. Ve'asi lemivol acha chalitza, and even after chalitza, when yibum has been dissolved, they might still end up doing yibum because they'll think that the chalitza is actually just a joke. My time Amar Rabbanan maimer b'yivama mahane. How come the rabbis say that maimer being mikadesh sore makes a difference? Mishum de mahani ba'alma. Because being mikadesh a woman in general is a way to betroth the woman. The omid lo mahani, because if you're going to say that in the context of yibum, maimer makes no difference. The people are going to say maimer liknos via liknos. Well, maimer, right? When I would think that if Shimon does maimer with Sarah, gives her kesef kiddushin, that should make a kinyan, right? It should make them be married. Uvia liknos, and if Shimon were to sleep with Sarah, so that would also be a kinyan. I mean, the maimer lo mahani, and if we're saying that maimer doesn't do anything, bia nami lo mahanya, well then even bia with Sarah doesn't really make a difference. Basu the mivol acher bia, and then you might end up doing yibum like with the other, right, zika, with the other tzara after you already did it with the first one. Right, if Reuven was married to Sarah and Rivka, then you do bia with Sarah, you might think that you can do bia with Rivka as well, because you'll think that, well, maimer didn't really make a difference, so bia also didn't make a difference, but that's not true, so therefore we say that maimer does work. Umay time Amar Rabbanan bia psula yesh acharei klum. How come the rabbis say that by bia psula you still have to do chalitza? Meaning, right? So, for example, right, we had said that if Shimon does maimer with Sarah, and then he does bia with Rivka, so midoraisa maimer, it doesn't make a difference, and therefore when Shimon has bia with Rivka, that should be proper marriage. That should be midoraisa biyibum, and therefore a get should be enough to just break up that marriage, and also, but you wouldn't need chalitza anymore, and yet we say that you do need chalitza. So how come we still have chalitza after maimer, or even after a get, right? So for example, if he gave a get, if Shimon gave a get to Sarah, which midoraisa doesn't make any difference, and then he does yibum with Rivka, so midoraisa, the yibum with Rivka is proper yibum, and therefore a get alone should be enough. You shouldn't have to do chalitza anymore, and yet we still say that you have to do chalitza, right? So my time Amar Rabbanan bia psula yesh acharei klum. How can we say that after this bia with Rivka, you still need to have chalitza. So Amri, they're going to say, Yibia acher get. If we're talking about where Shimon gave a get to Sarah, and then he did bia with Rivka, so Yibia acher get, he, gezera bia acher get, mishum bia acher chalitza. Well, because we're concerned that if we say that you don't need to do chalitza after getting divorced from Rivka, well, then we have to be concerned about what about if instead of Shimon giving a get to Sarah, he actually did chalitza with Sarah, right? Meaning if we're saying that after Shimon gives a get to Sarah, and then if we're going to say that when he then does Yibum with Rivka after giving a get to Sarah, we're saying it's just regular bia, i.e. it's a proper Yibum, and you don't even need a chalitza afterwards, well then he might say the same thing if he does chalitza with Sarah, that if he does chalitza with Sarah and then he does Yibum with Rivka, he might think that that's also a proper bia. And therefore we say, look, even when you give a get, also do chalitza, and therefore, it'll make it clear that it is not a proper Yibum. V'bia acher maimer hi, and if we're talking about where Shimon did maimer with Sarah, and then he does Yibum with Rivka, so gzeira bia acher maimer mishum bia acher bia. So it's because we're concerned about this case of bia after maimer, right? If we say that it's just a proper bia, so then we might think that also, right, bia after bia is just a proper bia. So therefore we say to do chalitza afterwards, to say that no, that after you do maimer, any bia afterwards, you would still need to do a chalitza afterwards. It's not just that, right? Meaning, don't say that if I do maimer and then do bia afterwards, it's a proper bia. So then also, if I do bia with Sarah, I could still do bia with Rivka afterwards. No, don't say that. Rather, you still have to do chalitza to show that that it's not just a regular sort of yibum. And how come the rabbis say that when you have a chalitza psula, so for example, a chalitza after a get, right? So if you give a get and you do chalitza afterwards, so my ligzor, why shouldn't we have chalitza after a get? Nigzor chalitza acher a get, mishum chalitza acher chalitza. Are we concerned that, well, if you do chalitza after a get, so then you might also do chalitza after chalitza? Do chalitza as many times as you want. Who cares? Maybe we should be concerned that if after maimer you do chalitza, then I might think that if you do yibum, then you can dissolve that with chalitza without a get. So to chalitza acher maimer milo baya get. So one second, even after you do maimer and then you do chalitza, you still need a get for the maimer. So the maimaru chalitza acher biyanami baya get levi also. So also if he does, if he does yibum and then he does chalitza, he'll assume that you still have to give a get. Just like by maimer you need chalitza and a get. So you would think also that by yibum also, even if you do chalitza, you would still need a get as well. So therefore that is fine. There's really nothing to be concerned about. Anyways, friends, today we learned Daf Nun Masechta Yevamos. We started the 5th parak, all sorts of different combinations of like yibum and chalitza and all sorts of stuff. And alright, that was Daf Nun. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.